On the episode today, we have Petar Krastev. Petar, welcome.
Hey Tom, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
It is very nice to have you. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm an online fitness coach. I'm Bulgarian. I started this business 6 years ago in the UK, so I spent 10 years living in there. And this is what I do. I do help people around the world get fitter, and it's kind of happened that my life led me to this place. It's something that I chose to do because it was like the only option. Sometimes life guides you in weird places through a lot of shit storms, and suddenly you find yourself somewhere, and then you realize that's the only option you have. That's what happened to me, and that's what I do.
Okay, thank you for the introductory introduction. When I looked through your profile, it really stood out as quite a compelling story. Very interesting. I wanted to ask you lots of questions about it.
Hmm.
And I will be learning at the same time as the listener. So the first part of the introduction is at the age of 22, you escaped your home country. So,
Yeah,
where were you, and what was the context in terms of like why did you need to escape?
I was in Bulgaria, in Varna. Varna is the name of the city. It's on the Black Sea coast. A beautiful city. If you come visit now here, it's full of tourists, lots of British people, lots of all sorts of people. But unfortunately, back then it was very tough. The economy was poor, and for a guy who has no abilities, no skills or anything um, to handle this kind of tough situation, it was very, very tough. So we couldn't pay rent, we couldn't pay electricity bills, barely surviving. I had a very toxic relationship, which was like 1 year into the relationship, and it was with a woman that had a kid. So I was a stepdad, and that's me at the age of 22, trying to be a stepdad. The whole thing was a real shitstorm. It led me to there where I was working like 12 hours a day, at least, even two jobs, working night shifts. I was lots of into drugs and bad companies, and even selling them, working at strip clubs just to pay the bills, and still struggling to pay the bills. And she had health conditions, very serious health conditions, something that had to be treated right away, or sh the danger was she would have lost her teeth at the age of about 30. She was a few years older than me, so she was like 4 years older. I've been 22, so she must have been 26. And I imagine if I continued living with her, which I had to, um, and she goes through this in the worst way possible, that won't be a very pleasant life. We had a toxic relationship anyway. And the problem I had faced then is when I got into this relationship, I gave a promise to protect the child, and because of her past, I had to actually commit to not leave her in the middle of the road in a way that she'll be forced to give the child to his its parents, its father's parents. So the grandparents of the child were the only possible people to look after it if it wasn't the mom, if that makes sense. But they were also a very kind of bad people. The father wasn't there. He was kind of alcoholic and an irresponsible person. A very, very tough place. And the child already had went through a very tough journey and a lot of trauma for the 2 years of his life. Me doing something irresponsible like breaking up with her and leaving her in the middle would have been very devastating, not just for her but for the kid. So I took that as a responsibility, and because of that responsibility, I had to do things that normal human being wouldn't do for another human being. So I had to sacrifice a lot. I lost all my connections here because of the way I was living. The relationship with my parents was falling apart. Everything turned into hell. And one day I lost my job for a second or third time, actually. And the guy who I was working with um, accidentally actually told me he can get me a job in the UK in a car wash. And I was like, yeah, I will take that because it, it looked like I'm gonna make a little bit more money than here. I will be out of this prison that I was living. I didn't want to go home, to be honest. To get inside my house, my apartment, that was horrible. I had times, moments, very often actually, almost every day, where I walk around and I just don't want to go home after work because it was so toxic in there. The moment I get in, it was very, very toxic. I didn't want to step in there. Eventually, I had to. So for me, going abroad was the opportunity to, first of all, escape from that toxicity and then either fix everything financially, which was going to be expensive with her health conditions and looking after the kid, paying the bills back home. She wasn't able to work, so it was a lot on my shoulders. So either I was going to make it, or we're going to everything was going to fall apart and we're going to break up. And I'm either way out of the situation I am, and that's how I left. Um, and I couldn't leave actually. My mom gave me 500 euros. That 500 euros was the only money we could find. I had no money from savings, from I couldn't sell anything. It was we were completely broke. My mom found this 500 euros somehow. I bought the tickets to the UK. I got a, a bag full of clothes, 10 euros in my pocket. The rest of the money I gave to my girlfriend, and that's how I left the country with 10 euros and landed in Luton. It was the 14th of September in 2014. I still remember the date. And quickly that then things turned around there. Um, it wasn't what I expected for sure.
Well, thank you for the answer.
Yeah.
So my what would you say? Summary of what the position you're in is that you're working all the hours you possibly can, two jobs, and then when you do get to go home, is not a nice environment, as you said, toxic. Before we move on to the next part, if someone was in that scenario themselves, you're in a better place
Mm.
now. What would you say to them? What advice would you give to them?
Oh,
Because presumably it's not go and get a job in a car wash, but you're in a better
honestly,
place now, and so what's your advice?
uh, pray to God. I gotta say that I did not believe in God back then or anything, but eventually, for the 5, 6 years later, I did found him and he saved my life. So I can say that this is going to help. And when it comes to handling the situation yourself, um, all we can do is just keep going. When you're in a relationship, if it's so toxic and if there's nothing holding you there, really like literally physically holding you there, you should just get out probably. I don't see a reason to live in a relationship like that. And we often do. We often think we're going to change a person. When you fall in a relationship where the other person is extremely toxic with you and never satisfied with you, never happy with you, never appreciating you, regardless how hard you try, that person is broken, is damaged. Now I know that. I didn't see that then. But that person is very damaged. And for them to change, they have to go through a massive journey and they probably have to hurt somebody to start feeling guilty about them, so their own behavior. And that somebody will be you. And for you to get hurt, if you already allowed yourself to get into that relationship and that person is still not seeing how bad they're treating you and how toxic they are with you and draining everything out of you, that means you have to go a way further deep into the shit before they actually realize what's going to happen. And most probably it's going to happen at the end when you break up. And there's a quite good chance to happen what happened to me many years later when I did all the possible things for them, all the things that nobody else believed it could be done. I achieved everything and we'll probably share that. And in that moment, she broke up with me with and went with another guy. And that's what's going to happen with you if you stick with a toxic relationship. They will never be happy with you. They will never love you um, until they feel really, really guilty. And probably that's going to be a point too late. Too late. Somebody else will replace that void for them and you'll be left. That's
It
my
is
experience
interesting that
anyway.
my initial thoughts were that you were going to have more of an emotional reaction to the situation, but it does seem like the relationship was more draining than the situation you were in. Kind of like if you'd have been, let's say, single and you'd had two jobs in the situation you were in, it would probably been a little bit more bearable. Is that fair?
Um, if I was single, I wouldn't be in the situation I was. That's the whole thing. No,
Oh, okay.
no reasonable person will put himself through all that I had to put myself through for himself. Like, he would just find an easier way. I could live with my parents. I could just have a job and just live a normal life. For me, that wasn't possible because I had to pay the bills for a kid and for a girlfriend and for myself and still chase my dreams. I actually had big dreams. I always had big dreams. Me getting involved into this relationship meant that the dreams became about three times harder to achieve. And
Okay.
probably that's what the catalyst is, and that's what actually made it possible for me to achieve them because I wasn't going to push myself as hard as I need to achieve what I want to achieve and what I am right now. So me going through this journey was so important for me, and now I appreciate it so much. But then, yeah, definitely did not appreciate it. And if I have to repeat it, I'll never repeat it. I'll definitely make another decision. But it built me up, so I'm grateful.
And we're skipping ahead a bit, but did you ever speak to that person again after you're in a better place, or?
No, 6 months after we broke up, she sent me a message, say how sorry she is for hurting me that bad. And I replied once with one message, and I said, never contact me again because I'm trying to forget every single moment with you. Um, and that's it. I blocked, restricted, and never got in touch again.
Okay. Well, next part of your story is kind of like a fascinating scenario, which is you arrived in the UK with just 10 euros and a bag of old clothes. Quite intimidating, I think, just being in a new country, let alone just having 10 euros in your pocket. So,
It
what are
was.
you feeling at that point, and what do you do?
Um, I've never been like scared of hard work or just doing something unknown. I actually had this urge to get out of my toxic environment. So for me, initially was more of an excitement. Yeah, I'm finally doing something. I actually got out, and um, the problem was that things didn't turn out the way they were. I went to live in a house of the owner of the car wash, but the car wash was just about to close down. It was failing. So I couldn't make any money and I still had to pay the owner money. And I ended up owing him money right from the start, from the first week, because I had no cash to pay him. I had to make money to pay him, and I didn't make any. Um, in 2 weeks, I had to quickly solve that issue. So I left for another car wash, which was the only option that I found. And that was another even more toxic place. That was extreme. That's where it probably really hit me hard. That it's not gonna be easy. I found myself in this car wash with two guys from Kosovo, and they still exist. That car wash is still there, which I'm very surprised about. UK claims to be all about protecting people's rights and doing the right things and everybody to be treated well. Well, that car wash in Hemel Hempstead, in Leighton Buzzard Road, there's a car wash there where they treat people like slaves. They will shout at you. They will treat you worse than animals all day long. You will work 12 hours shifts. Very, very hard work. They will want you to work fast, not just slow, and the queue will be never ending. The work is extremely hard. Physically, not many people can handle it. And I really struggled. And few weeks in there, you get paid £80 a week or something like, no, sorry, apologies, my mistake. £30 a day was my payment, and £80 a week was the rent for the house. I was living in their house. So you can imagine you live with almost nothing. You're not registered. They don't pay your taxes. They don't employ you or anything like that. That place is still there. Nobody does anything about it. Anyway, um, a few weeks into this place, I go to find another job. Well, I'm sending all the money back home for my girlfriend and to pay the bills. And for me, it's left almost nothing. I'm barely eating donuts with for 60p just to survive. And every now and then, the owners of the car wash will buy us a treat of peri peri chicken, and that was like a holiday for me. That was so good. But it was like £6 peri peri chicken. For those who don't know, it's not nothing expensive. But for me, that was the best meal I've got. And 3 weeks in that car wash, about 3 weeks, I left one day without their permission to apply for jobs. And I went to a printing store, I printed a bunch of CVs, and I started walking around the city and the town and giving my CVs to anywhere they were searching for people. I was literally walking into shops, into restaurants. Do you need people? If they say yes, here's my CV. Please give it to your manager. And next and next. And I went through the whole city center and everything. I went back to the car wash. It was a bit of a scandal. They told me you left. If you do that again, you're out on the street. And I knew they're serious. On the next day or 2 days after, I received a call. And the guy from Subway is talking to me. He said, can you come for a trial? Making sandwiches at Subway, normal pay, employed. I was like, that's what I need. I need to get out of there. So I said, yeah, 100% I'm coming. And we set the trial day uh, a few days later. And again, I left like, because they wouldn't let me go. If they know I want to go, they will fire me right on the spot. So I escaped like early in the morning before they see me. I went there, did my trial. The boss liked me a lot. He said he'll take me. I was, by the way, barely speaking English. When I came to the UK, the first month before this interview, I managed to get myself this job because I was studying English any possible minute that I had. I had these little papers of like notes. They're into pieces, and one side is the Bulgarian word, and the other side is the English word, or sometimes sentence. And I was like turning them around any possible minute. That got me to the place where I can say, "Hi, how are you? What is this?" and so on. That guy in Subway gave me a chance, and that's where I learned a little bit more of the language. So, fast forward, I went to the trial. He liked me. I go back to the car wash, and they kicked me out right on the spot. So I found myself, that was mid-November or something, on the street in Hampstead. It was just about getting very, very cold. The first night, I left my luggage somewhere, and barely survived. The first 2 nights, I had to walk all night so I don't freeze to death. It was that cold. Seriously, I knew that if I stop, it's probably not gonna wake up. So I had to keep walking. It was exhausting, but in the same time, I never lost hope. I I always had that survival instinct. I knew Bear Grylls is surviving in the wild. If I can't survive in the city, then fucking hell, what am I? You know, I gotta be able to, and that kept me going. That kept me going. Eventually, a woman gave me a place to live for a few weeks without me being able to pay right on the spot because I had no money at all. Um, at the end, I wanted to pay her like 2 3 weeks later, and she didn't take my money. I only had that much to pay her for these weeks, or maybe 2 weeks, and she said, "No, keep it." She was very very kind, but I knew I can't carry on this way. I couldn't still pay the bills back home. I needed more money, or I needed cheaper rent. And that's when I decided to go to my urgency plan. I had one urgency plan. I made it probably at the age of 18 when I had a realization that I want to be an entrepreneur, and I knew that's going to involve major risks, credits, and sometimes I might find myself in a shitstorm. And I back then I developed a plan, and I said, if something happens, I will go to a country with a better economy, where the normal job is well paid, and I will hire a garage. I will live in the garage, and I'll save money, and I will get out of the situation. That's kind of logical. And that's what actually happened. So I hired the garage, and I ended up living in this garage without electricity, without water, for way longer than I ever thought I will. It was 18 months I spent there. It got flooded on the first night. And I think that's the moment, this period, since starting to live in the garage, going to Subway, it was 3.5 miles away. I had to walk it every day. My shoe soles were like wearing off every month or less. So I had to change my shoes constantly so I can continue walking that distance. That period, not because of the hard work and the crazy amount of hours that I had to put in, but because of the loneliness, because of being in a foreign place. I had no friends at all. Only bricks and houses, something that's not very appealing to me coming from Bulgaria. Roads and cars, no places to go out, practically nothing. And my phone was like something like Alcatel. I had practically nothing, and I was isolated and alone. And I think that loneliness is something that makes people quit in everything. That was so extreme. I wanted to end my life in a few times. Um, and I didn't, obviously. But that was the hard part. And I kept working. I found another job, and yeah, a couple of years later, um, things developed a little bit more. I made a lot of the money that I needed, which was extremely more than what I expected. I paid for all the treatments of my girlfriend by that point. After a very hard relationship, we're already like 3 years into the relationship, 3.5. And I even bought a car, and I thought, finally, we're getting somewhere. And in the day I bought the car for her, she actually bought the car with the money that I sent. On the same day, she's posting a photo with another guy on Facebook. And that's when we broke up. So that's how life goes.
Well, it's an amazing bit of detail that you've just added there, and I don't want to glaze over any of it. But the detail about walking all night so that you don't freeze is significant. I don't feel like we should just, go past that. But I do want to ask, do you is there anything misconceptions wise, so stuff people get wrong about people who are homeless or your experience in that time? Have you got any additional thoughts that you haven't said already?
No, I think I shared the way it is. I want to say that being homeless is not the end of the world. Being without friends and without nobody, that's worse. Being without the prospect of getting anywhere, that's worse. Being on the streets, it's not that big of a deal.
Do
All you
you
have to do
think that's
is survive.
because you're tough, or do you think that's the experience for everyone?
No, it's genuinely not a big deal. You're just
Okay.
staying outside, just staying outside. It's bad when you just broke up, when you just lost and you fall like from a high place and you know you're not gonna get there anywhere anytime soon. The emotional pain from finding yourself there for some people is very tough, but the actual living on the street is that's not the end of the world. That I had good times. I had one Christmas I spent with my friend on the streets in London. Um, and we're sleeping on a duvet in a park, literally on the streets. That wasn't the end of the world. There are worse things than that. When people get into drugs and they're living in the streets, when they get addictions, alcohol, um, gambling, these things make it way harder. If you're a normal man or a woman, you find yourself in the streets, just find a way out of there. You will find it. Somebody will help you. You'll find a job. All it takes is you get a job so you can pay the rent, right? Today's no today's days nobody will push you for the money if you owe money. For example, you owe money to the bank. Well, if you can't pay your rent, no bank is allowed to, at least in the Western countries, to take your money, right? So it's kind of safe. It's kind of safe. Obviously, maybe depends where you are. And but if it's a safe place, yeah, just don't lose hope if you find yourself on the streets because it does happen. People do lose their houses, do lose their businesses. Shit happens. but you go through it. Handling the emotional damage from finding yourself there, from being alone, isolated, nobody there to help you. And with that damage and that isolation, being able to thrive and continue pushing forward and really believing that you can make it, that's the hard part. So you should never stop doing that. You have to continue one day at a time. At that time, I had no clue how am I going to get out of this situation one day. Absolutely no idea. But I could still live. I could still breathe. I could still try. So it proves you can get out of there.
It's an amazing message and a very interesting insight that loneliness is actually worse than homelessness. That's a really interesting thing that
Much
I
worse.
didn't know.
Much worse. I think
Um,
loneliness is the worst thing that a man can experience. I don't feel anything worse than that. Being deeply alone and without hope, that is the worst thing. That is definitely the worst thing. And I've been through all kinds of shit. That's the worst thing. Losing somebody, which will probably lead to the same situation, and that feeling is just killing you.
well, it begins to get a little bit better as you get a job, and then I mean, living in a garage, I would imagine, is tough, especially with no water, right?
Mm.
But what's the point where you think, because you had a dream about being an entrepreneur, essentially. What's the point where you think this is actually possible for me?
I always had a little faith, to be honest, and I never lost that faith. I just never knew how it's going to happen up to the very late stage. And to be honest, right from Bulgaria, before that girlfriend, I and after her, I've tried all sorts of businesses, all the websites, Amazon FBAs, all courses for properties, anything that comes to your mind. I tried to get myself into that. So I never stopped trying. There was something in me that knew however hard this is, if I go through this, then what is stopping me? So I just found myself found a way through this and through these struggles. And I knew at the end of it, if somebody's gonna make it, that's gonna be me. Like who who else goes through shit like that? I knew that if I make it, then that's pretty much it. I'm gonna make it with business or whatsoever. That kept me going. Um, yeah, does that answer the question? I kind of lost my train of thought.
No, no, I was interested in your answer. The actual question was around at what point do you
Oh,
think, okay, this is going to work for me? But it sounded like your answer was, I always thought it was possible.
yeah, I always thought it was possible. Indeed. Then obviously with every business endeavor, you kind of get excited, especially if you're new to this. The amount of times I failed, every single time I had the excitement that I was thinking, oh, maybe that's gonna work now. Some things were like paying off. Some little ventures were providing some money capital to live more normal, to feel like I'm doing something right. And always in these moments, you feel like, yeah, I'm probably gonna make it even more. And then it falls apart, and you're like, fuck, now I'm back again to square one. I think there was a very pivotal point when 2 years after breaking up with her, maybe 2.5 years, I also lost a business that I started just after her, which I did with my friend. It was with Amazon and some websites, and we were actually doing well. I think if we stick together, we could have made it big. But we split up our kind of. He wanted to do something else. He wanted to dive into other things, and his attention wasn't in the business. And I decided to part ways because I couldn't run it in this way. We were going to die as a business, and I couldn't handle it myself. And that's when we lost it. And at that point, I was already too late. So at the age of 28 or 27. And imagine for somebody who always wanted to be rich, I was willing to get rich or die trying. I I wasn't happy with myself at all. I was depressed. I was comparing myself to other people at my age who had normal jobs, took the other out of being safe and just having a career, and they already had kids and families. I was living almost like homeless in another country, struggling to pay the bills. No prospects of becoming rich or having a business or making a profit whatsoever. And I realized if I continue making the same mistakes like I've been making so far, I will end up extremely miserable and I will definitely waste my youth. I will be old by the time something clicks. And I didn't want to make that mistake again. And I spent about 6 months studying the most successful people that I could find. And I wasn't studying everybody. I was studying just people who had extreme success, who maintained it for a long time, and who also enjoyed it. And they seemed good people to me. And a couple of things stood out. One of them was that they love what they do, and the other thing was they never quit. I was definitely a quitter. As I said, the last business I quit it because of this and that. I had reasons. I always had reasons to quit. And I think most people find themselves in these situations. They say, I have a reason to quit. Yeah, but you're still quitting. That doesn't change the fact that you're quitting. And if that's your behavior, then that's going to lead to more quitting and it's not going to lead to more results. So I realized I have to commit to something and not quit. And it has to be secure, it has to be possible, and I have to be able to love it too. And love it, being able to love it and committing was the priority. So uh, the reality was that there was only one thing that I could possibly love. Throughout these years of all this struggle, I always was like going to the gym either to take a shower when I was living in a garage or next later in a basement where I spent 2 years. So like 4 years I had to go to the gym just to take a shower. And that going to the gym kind of kept me going, gave me strength, gave me that fight in life, the zest, whatever you call it. I was invigorated to keep going, keep fighting. As a kid, stepping into the gym, that gave me a little bit of confidence because I was the bullied kid. So in my life, going to the gym was never easy. I always hated going to the gym, but was the one thing that when I do it, it does pay off. It simply does. Whatever you do, it's just you come out stronger, you come out better, and you love it. You love the result of it. So I thought if there's anything I could possibly love, that's gotta be it. I have to commit to that. So without actually loving it, without being an athlete, without being in shape, I was skinny fat back then. I then said I will commit my life, the rest of my life, to this calisthenics. It was a type of sport, which then spread out to just sports, and I'm still doing calisthenics, but everything else as well. And that commitment meant I'm not gonna stop this again. I might be changing jobs, I might be changing families, industries, anything can happen. But I said this one thing, I'm just never gonna quit it. And then I started studying how to make money and so on. So at the point when I committed to do this, that was a very pivotal point. It was a 15-minute window. I was just walking out at a parking lot in Amazon where I was working, and I decided, let's commit. And I knew then, I was actually happy and excited. I knew that this is something serious. This is now something that's going to actually stick. It was the right decision to make, and it took me a long time to figure this out. So maybe this is the point you're asking for.
And have you got a high point of your fitness coaching? It's the highest point that you can think of, like an achievement.
There is a lot. So first of all, changing people's lives. There were quite high points. Right. I think the events that we're doing, which change a lot of people's lives and to get all together at once. The fitness retreat that we did this year, it was the second retreat. So we have a community and we do annual fitness retreats. And this year's one was an outstanding experience. Everything was just so perfect. The location on the beach, a premium resort. It was it was beautiful. Everybody was happy. People came from around the world. That's because what we do, it changes them, it changes their life. They appreciate it. We had friendships. We all grew up. I think doing these things, seeing people coming, that as a coaching experience seems to be like the top what I've done.
You've come a long way.
Hmm.
And I wonder what you've got goals wise. What are you looking to achieve in the future?
Um, so I have a very long-term goals, which are to have a serious impact in my country, in my home city, in everything. Looking at the reasons why I left the country, why was the economy poor, why didn't I have an example to follow, and why was I the guy I was, and together with everybody else. Um, I want to change that. I want to be part in changing this. And then I want to fulfill my purpose, whatever I'm here for, which means I'll just give my best to be my best in everything, in my training, in my business. Right now, my short-term goals are something that I've already started is we're launching my own podcast, and that's going to be live soon, Limitless Body and Mind. With that, I will coach and educate people um, who don't work with me directly. The YouTube channel, the community is going to continue growing. Um, I'll start traveling around the world a little bit more. I'm going to Dubai this December, and yeah, I'll just keep growing. Pretty straightforward.
Well, it's a very inspirational story, and yeah, I love the toughness and the how far you've come is just amazing to listen to. For people who want to connect with you, maybe visit the website or follow you on social media. Where do they go?
Yeah, the website is pk.coach. Simple as that. pk.coach. And social media, if you search my name, Petar Krastev, in any social media channel, I'll probably come up first. Or you can search me in Google too. Anything you can find for me in Google. If you want to get in touch, just use the website, straightforward, or any of the social media channels. Again, if you message me there, I'll happily chat. So, yeah,
And do you have any closing thoughts for the episode today?
um, life is life is hard and still you can make it. I mean, regardless how hard it is. It seems like for the 10 years I spent struggling, I've been through more shit than I could ever imagine going through my whole life. And when you're in that storm, when you're in that shit, it seems like that's your life. But that is just a fraction of your life, regardless how long and painful it seems, even if it's like for years stuck in one place. It seems to life seems to have its way to just get you through this, and then you find yourself reborn. You find a new energy, new life, new days, and things turn around. So just enjoy the ride, learn to enjoy everything, I guess.
A great closing message. Peter, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom.